Hello, everybody. We're back. It's AASLR once again. And I'm here with the professionally evil Jennifer Shannon. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm watching you panic and sweat just a little bit.
So, for anybody wondering, I'm having some technical issues where my API that I set up was working and then it stopped working around the same time that I joined. I was
Hmm.
hoping to do a live demo on how to get through some of the things that we would look for an API, but you guys might just have to listen to me explain it instead.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens. We love doing things live and messing up live. That's everybody loves the crash.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah, it makes them
Uh,
feel better when they can see other people have problems too, and it's not just them.
oh, and for sure, one of the things that I've definitely learned in this field, always forget how to type whenever anybody's watching me. So,
Oh yeah,
I had hoped
it's
originally that I would have some time to maybe do a recording in case this happened because I knew this was gonna happen, but with it being the end of the year, we're just so busy. I haven't had
mm,
chance to do it, and I should have.
oh boy. Well, that's all right. We'll get through it. What can you explain to us then? I'm going to
So,
hand it off to you.
okay. So I'm, I guess real quick, a little bit about myself. I'm a senior security consultant here at Secure Ideas. And today, what I want to talk about a little bit is testing APIs. And if I could ever remember what API stands for on the first try, that would be a miracle, but it's the application program interface. And for those who aren't aware, as time goes on, most of our web applications are increasingly becoming just a GUI interface with the backend web application. And a way that I've seen it explained a lot for people who don't know what an API is it's kind of like a kitchen in that if my computer is my kitchen, I have stuff in there to cook some things, but I don't have stuff in there to cook everything, and it's not going to be everything that I want. So let's say that my oven's not good enough to make a pizza in. So I can go up the road and to a pizza place and order a pizza and they have the necessary components required to make me a pizza, but they don't want to just give me free range into their kitchen. And it works very similar to Facebook. Facebook doesn't want to give everybody access to everything on their end. They don't want us rifling through their computers, but they do need to provide some data to us to use their website. So that the way that the
You're on a need
API,
to know basis.
yeah. So, and I'll talk a little bit later about the biggest issues that we see with APIs, but that need to know basis is a really big pitfall that people kind of tend to fall into. So, yeah, you just make the API call, it goes through, it checks, it says, hey, does this person have access to see this? And then it sends you back information. So, for testing APIs, there are usually two tools that I use in conjunction with each other. They are Postman and Burp. And I've set this up today using Burp Community Suite because I know that not everybody can afford, not everybody has the professional license like I do. And so I didn't want to, I guess,
Okay, so we
muddy the
want to
waters.
see the screen now.
Yep. So we can go
All
ahead
right,
and share the
switching to
screen.
it.
So
I'm gonna hide
this
myself.
is just, so first of all, we have a Postman right here. Yay. Let me make sure I've got I have some collections to the side so that I can show how to import them. And if anybody's wondering, the most important setting in Postman, right here, themes. We can switch it to dark mode by going there. I think by default it goes by the system default, so mine was dark. I've got it switched to light so that it's a little bit easier to for everybody at home to see. Let's see. I like Postman because, as we can see over here on the side, it kind of gives us a really good idea of what we're dealing with. I have stuff in here already, so what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new workspace. We're going to name this VAPI because I recently started using this tool called VAPI, and you can get it on GitHub. If I can go pull that up real quick. I will go ahead and share that link so that it can be sent out for anybody who wants to set this up at home. It was actually surprisingly easy to set up, and I will go over the setup a little bit, especially the MySQL database part, because maybe people aren't familiar with databases. So generally, whenever I'm setting this up, I kind of want to make everything personal, especially since I'm testing client data. We have non-disclosure agreements. I don't want to accidentally leak client data anywhere. So I try to make sure that everything stays with just me. Let's see. And we can import collections. There's a few different ways to import. Sometimes clients will give us YAMLs or JSON, or they can just give us a Postman collection itself that we can just load up into Postman. We can even do it by link. I tend to do it by just raw text, which you can easily copy and paste. So VAPI, for those who don't know, whenever we set that up, it has an API already. It's the full API that we can do some testing and labs on. So luckily for us, they give us the everything formatted exactly how it needs to be. So we can just quickly import that. And here we're going to take over the environment name and the VAPI environment. And we can go over here to environments, and we see it's right here. And here we can configure host. We're going to set this to, oh, forgot how to type again. Wow.
Can you zoom up the screen text on this?
Yeah, I wonder if that is a good question. I am not.
Look for the embiggen button.
I do not see one. Let's see.
All right, if it's not a super quick thing, we can keep going.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Ooh, I just punched my microphone. So I put in localhost because whenever we set up the VAPI, it's going to default into localhost. The initial value here is going to say localhost, but we're going to change that to the URL that it's going to end up with. And what this does, once we leave this, it just kind of saves it. If we go back, there are variables that we can set. And whenever we're making the API calls, it's going to call into this. So over here, I have a really long entire API schema for this. And it's a very simple API once I get that loaded in. If we'll ever get to the bottom of this document. There we go. We are going to import the API. They're generally formatted like that. And again, we're going to pull over the collection name. We're going to pull over the VAPI. And then we can go into the collections. This is everything we have to work with here. So as we can see, we look here. We're going to go just click on to create user. Since we set this, oh, nope, it didn't want to. So we can add the new variable here.
I got a person in chat saying control plus the mouse wheel up will zoom with most things.
Yeah, I tried that one. I also tried the control plus. Oh my gosh, now it worked.
Now it's working.
There we go. A little bit easier to see. Haha. I hope that works in my Kali VM too. Oh, so I'm adding the variable here. So this way, we don't have to keep entering this in later. Host collection. And then we set. And right there at the end, whenever I said for the collection API, basically it's going to keep it from bleeding over into too many other things. And this gives us a pretty good overview of the entire API. We can go through, we can see that they have the different API versions and different APIs included in this. And we can see create user. And trying to figure out where I'm going right now. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the VM where I have this set up already. I've got it right here. Already set up. And normally what we would like to do is, if we're going to integrate this with Burp, what we would like to do is go to settings. We have the proxy right here. And we would set up the proxy to go through localhost the same way that we have it set up in Burp. So if we pull Burp up over here, and I wish I knew a way to make Burp bigger. It would make my life easier. Let's see. No, that just taps through everything I don't need. Okay. So we're going to go over here. Yeah, it was worth a shot. We've got options, and I don't know if you can really see right here. I have my proxy bound to port 8080, and again, it's going to be localhost of 127.0.0.1. There's no place quite like home. And we have intersect. We've got Postman. It's set 127.0.0. Haha, there we go. It took a few tries to get it. That's a little bit. So use the system. And I thought this might have been my issue earlier whenever it wasn't. Wasn't completing the request. I like in Postman that you can turn off the needing certificates or not, which, as you may know, with Burp can often be kind of a little bit tricky, especially if you're using it for like a mobile application or something and you have to start moving over certificates and make sure everything's in the right place and loaded. But luckily with Postman, we can generally just ignore that and fly over it. And in a perfect world, this would have worked. But no, it's just going to hang forever.
Got a question. What is the purpose of Burp?
So Burp, for those who don't know, this is a really neat pen testing tool. Kind of acts as a proxy. All of my traffic goes through it. So I can very easily, let's see, let's go ahead and open this browser. I'll give you a demonstration of what it'll do real quick. And please be patient with my VM. It is probably at its max. So if it would let me type, that would be great.
It's thinking about it.
It is thinking very hard right now. Just going to let that think for a minute. So whenever I'm interacting with it, it's specifically designed for web applications, but we can use it for mobile applications. We can use it for APIs and anything that has any form of a web request that can be made. We set Burp up to listen and we'll perform the web request, and Burp will grab all of the traffic so that we can see everything that happens. And this is really helpful because a lot of times with like APIs, checks will take place on client side or someplace after the request is submitted. So let's say that what I was going to try and show was if I do a GET request for GET users for Susan with her email address, her authorization key, and her username, it'll give me back all of the information on Susan, her address, and everything that is relevant to just her. And it will only display that in my web browser. It won't show me the information for everyone else. But if I do the same request through the repeater tool, which just allows me to replay whatever request I want, it would have returned the information for every user in the database and only displayed in my browser what I was technically allowed to see. But because I just bypassed the browser entirely using Burp, it actually gives me everything. And that is actually a very common issue to see with APIs. I kind of went on a tangent there. I didn't really answer the Burp thing, did it?
I think it was a good answer.
Okay.
I honestly don't. I don't know what it is for either, so I can't verify what you're
Oh.
saying. Because I'm just the video guy. I'm not the hacker.
I will say, definitely, I don't think I could be the video guy for, well, the first reason I'm not a guy, but I don't think I could be the video girl either. It's one of those things, and to go on a little bit of a tangent here, anybody can do what I do. I remember when I
That's what
first
I think
started.
about
Yeah.
video and
So
editing.
you
It's like
probably get where
anybody could do
I'm
this.
coming. When I first started in this field, I was a SOC analyst, and then I ended up becoming a threat intelligence analyst, where I reverse engineered malware and did pen testing. And somebody had asked me pretty soon after I was promoted in that position, like, how are you doing? How is it? How do you feel like you're doing good? And I said, I don't know. I'm making up everything as I go. And apparently that was really concerning. But one thing I've learned, one, I think that the humor between men and women tends to be a little bit different. But one thing I've learned is that this field kind of makes everybody feel like an idiot. I've many talented programmers and hackers, and they have all routinely come across I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing. I have to go read. I don't know.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
if I had stopped at yeah, I don't know what this API is. I don't know. I don't even know what an API is. I would not be failing miserably at showing people how to test an API right now. Look how far I've come. I can at least
Well, I
acknowledge.
I can tell you
Mhm.
your video seems to be having some problems too right now. Your computer's probably very maxed out.
It probably
Is probably
is.
what's going on. I don't know if there's anything else you can running in the background that could be turned off or shut down.
Let's double check real quick. I tried to make sure I shut everything I did not need down. Let's go ahead and turn off that one.
Doing a live video stream
Mhm.
is quite processor intensive and system intensive. It can be surprisingly so.
Yes. I think that's one of the big reasons why I've never been able to really get into streaming is I know that in a lot of ways the hardware I have is just not cut out for it. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Wherever my browser went, it's up here. Nope, it hates us. Okay.
Oh boy.
Well, once we unfreeze, I will go ahead and move on to, there we go.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go. And for anybody who does not know, Burp, I do believe runs with JavaScript. So it is not normally something I would try to run in a VM. But again, I didn't really want to, since I have the professional extension, which just allows automated scanning and some additional tooling. I also did not want to risk any chance of there being any client data. So normally would not be running this in a VM just because I know Burp is actually a very process intensive application to use. But we can go ahead and talk about setting up the VAPI, which is the link that I posted earlier. It is actually super handy. And as we can see, it's up, it's running. It just, it hates me. We can install this using Docker, and I'm not going to execute every single command to do this just because I don't want to install it over what's already installed.
I'm gonna paste that link one more time because it's been a little bit. Anybody new?
Oh, there we go.
The demo gods require another sacrifice. Yes, they do.
Yeah. I wonder what I need to, I think that they would probably give me back my firstborn kid. Okay. You know what? I was trying to make my terminal bigger, and it's increasing the size of my background. That is interesting. We're just
Yeah, I
gonna,
think it's running hard right now.
yeah, let's go ahead and downsize all of those. Oh, we got a beep. And we're just gonna. Yay. Wow. I think it just hard froze.
Uh-oh.
Let's see. Hooray. So while
VM
we're
went
waiting for it,
vominos.
it did. So while we're waiting for it, I'll talk a little bit about the OWASP Top 10 project, which for anybody who doesn't know, there is the OWASP Top 10. And I think that when a lot of people hear about it, they assume the web application top 10. They do have another project, which is the top 10 for APIs, and it's a little less popular or known, I guess, just because it's APIs. I think it was last updated in 2019 to my understanding, so it also doesn't get updated as much. The first thing that we kind of look for is broken level authorization, which it kind of tends to expose endpoints or entirely too much information that it really shouldn't be giving back to users without performing the correct authorization and checks. Then we have the broken user authentication. Wow, my brain is having a seg fault just like my VM today, which, like I said earlier, is pretty easy sometimes to bypass the authentication. There's also the excessive data exposure, where it's pretty common for APIs to just spit back entirely too much information. We have the improper assets management, which again is really kind of exposing a little bit more for the endpoint and the back end than a web application really needs to be giving to a user. And any information like this could potentially be damaging to a web application or a company, because I think the VM just shut off. We
It'll be back.
hopefully. Segfault, I got to think for a second. Okay. Any information that can be given out or any information given out that's not what is strictly necessary to use an application can always provide a little bit more information, like an idea of the underlying technologies, which allows us to kind of take that information and do some research and figure out, well, they're running this or they have that, and I see that they have these vulnerabilities. Let's see if they are vulnerable to any of these potential exploits that are already out here. Let's see. I think I did the improper access, lack of resource and rate limiting. This is another one. It's not as big of an issue as the broken authorization and authentication. And for those who don't know, this is something that I still struggle with to this day. Authorization and authentication, kind of easy to get them mixed up. Authorization is what am I allowed to look at, and the authentication is here's proof that I can look at it. But not as big of a deal as that. We have the lack of resource and rate limiting. When we see that, a lot of times APIs kind of allow us to make a very large number of API calls in a very short time span. Uh, Ideally, you kind of want to limit that as much as possible because it one, if we're not limiting this, it's really easy to accidentally perform a denial of service attack because people can just submit a whole bunch of things at once, take up all of your server resources, and prevent it from giving out information to other people. But it also makes it a lot easier to enumerate information about the backend database and kind of get an idea for how things work. But if rate limiting or resource limiting is put in place, it kind of slows us down. It makes it a lot harder to get there. Then there's also the broken function level authorization. Uh, this is kind of going to play into the authorization part again, where a lot of times APIs have different roles. Somebody who's a regular user like myself doesn't have the need to see the same level of access that an admin would have. So sometimes it's kind of easy. There's not a lot of control taking place between the different levels of accounts. So it's still pretty easy sometimes to kind of get more information than I should have, even if the regular user account is properly controlled. Maybe it's still giving me a little bit too much to work with. And then we have the mass assignment, which is another uh, somewhat of a big one. Well, these are all big. They're the biggest, the top 10. But the mass assignment is for kind of, if we're binding, I'm trying to think of how to explain this one because this one's one that I definitely struggle to try and explain. But let's see. Also, while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and try and shut this down real quick and see if we can get it to come back up. Restart, since it hates us. Oh, a lot of times filtering here for the mass assignment kind of takes place on an allow list, and sometimes too many things are put on the allow list. So uh, again, it's going to break down into the authorization versus authentication issues. We have security misconfiguration, which is a very generic thing. It can range from anything to maybe cookies aren't set. Really? Sorry, I don't know if you can see,
What is
but
it saying?
it said failed to restart.
Oh, that's fun.
Right? Wow, did I just like entirely murder this VM that I just set up today? That's got to be a record.
Vertical
I'm
2, 1.
particularly good at killing things, by the way. Well, wait, hold up. Killing, breaking technology, not real things, not living things.
So
Okay, so it's still in my mouse, so it's going to take a second before I get it back while it's booting up. We also have injection flaws, which I think a lot of people would be pretty familiar with. A lot of things that we're kind of look for with APIs is, can I perform a type of command injection such as SQL, especially since the one that we have set up here has a SQL backend that it's pulling data from. So they're usually, if they're going to be susceptible to, oh great, now we're all wonky looking.
it's zoomed up for us quite a bit.
It is, wow. Let's, wow. Okay, that's valid, I guess. That is a way to, wow. I
Did it reset the VM resolution?
I think it did. It's probably going to want me to do the VMware tools again. So that's fun. Let's
So
see.
anybody watching, if you ever want to stress test your VM hardware, try doing a
Oh,
live stream at the same time.
for sure.
Then you'll have an excuse to ask for new hardware.
Oh, my VMs have especially been hating me lately. I had one just completely break down the other day. And then the last one for the top 10 that I don't think I've talked about yet, because I kind of keep jumping around a little bit here, is insufficient logging and monitoring. And that's going to be an issue across the board for just about every type of test we do. If you're not sufficiently monitoring connections or actions that are taken by the users interacting with the API, and you're not alerting on suspicious activity, it's kind of really easy to fly underneath the radar and get away with a lot more than you would normally be able to get away with because nobody saw it. Especially, and I can't remember the exact timeline off the top of my head, but I do know that the time difference between when a network is initially or a client is initially compromised to whenever they find out about the compromise is oftentimes many weeks. Uh, and having sufficient logs or any amount of logging really is going to be the first thing that you're going to want to look for to kind of try and figure out how did they get in, where did they go, how much damage have they done, how much have they actually had access to. So I am a huge proponent of logging, but that's just me. So we can go over, since apparently this whole thing just kind of broke, we can go over installing the VAPI and kind of setting up the MySQL database, hopefully more successfully than I have done today for everyone. But I will also, let's see, I can share the commands afterwards. So that way, a lot of the setting up process is in the GitHub that I linked earlier. But as far as importing into a database and looking at the database, maybe not. It's not in their GitHub. So you're kind of, if you're not used to working with SQL at all, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I kind of wanted to make it a little bit easier for somebody who's really new to this. And let's see. So the first step is we have the Docker compose /d. Yes. Also, I'm not sudo apparently, so let's see if it'll let me do this. Yes. Also, for anybody who is new to the Linux terminal, a really neat tool or trick that I've learned is that if you run a command and it needs sudo and you're like, oh crap, instead of having to retype everything, if you do the sudo and then the 2 exclamation points, it'll rerun that last command as sudo. But in this
Pro
case,
tip.
yes. So we're going to go ahead and cd into API. And I'm using Kali Linux, by the way. From here, what you would do is we would do a git. And since it looks like the API stuff is already there, I'm not going to actually overwrite anything. But from here, you can just copy paste the GitHub link from earlier. And it should work. Should just go ahead and download it. Real quick, I'm going to go look and see if MariaDB. Sorry, I'm checking real quick to see if this did. And of course, we're just going to continue with the, yep, so it's not started, so. Hooray for learning how to type.
It's that over the shoulder feeling.
Mm. Okay, now let's try. Oh, you know what? Don't ever do what I just did. You didn't see that. Really.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, it doesn't want to connect to the. Because why not have every possible thing that we can have? And Control-Shift-T opens a new terminal. Okay, so we're going to go. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that there was actually stuff in that database real quick. So realistically, in a perfect world,
In a world that is perfect.
I don't know why it hates me. Wow.
I don't either. I think you're very nice.
Thank you. I've never had this much of an issue with SQL because I used to do, of course, nobody will ever believe this, database administration. Not that anybody will ever believe me now.
I think we all know just how much the computer is struggling, and we don't blame you.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to figure out how to see, and I don't know if anybody plays Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that, but whenever I
In this audience,
yeah, whenever I have dice that are performing poorly, what I do is I banish them to the Shadow Realm. Oh, sorry, I just saw one of the questions. I will circle back to that, but I will banish them to Shadow Realm, which you can buy like these cool little like display cases because I buy cool looking dice. But if they are rolling poorly, been playing Starts Without Number, I have almost died because I keep rolling ones. So those dice get to go in a display case and never be used again. But unfortunately, I don't know how yet to banish a VM to the Shadow Realm other than just completely overwrite it and make it go away. So I guess that technically counts. So I will
do the same
share.
thing. You put it on a shelf somewhere and then
Uh-huh.
never open it again.
Yes, should do that. Um, So let's see. Somebody was asking about using burp to interact with the kernel level, I think, or the OS
Yes, that was
on.
JR from a bit
Yeah,
ago.
there we go. You know, I'm not too sure about that. Somebody might prove me wrong. As far as I'm aware, there's not a way to do that. If we're going to be looking at uh, OS level things, kind of what we're really going to want to be interacting with to get an idea of what's working there, would probably be debuggers and decompilers like Ghidra or IDA. I can't believe I just forgot IDA. Like, it's not the most popular decompiler out there.
Captain
So,
Crunch said that it is designed specifically for web application
yep.
pen testing. So doesn't mean it can't do it, but it's
Mhm.
not built for it.
Yeah, that's I'm always really hesitant to say no, it absolutely can't do that because to the
Because
best of my ability,
someone
yeah.
could prove everybody wrong and say,
Yes.
no, I figured it out. Here you go.
So, I'm gonna share my commands. I'll share them with you to kind of get let's see, for importing a database. Normally you would be able to connect with, wait a minute. Nope. Okay. Sorry. I wanted to make sure that was it. Normally you can connect with MySQL-U root, which because a lot of times we kind of want to lock down this dash p, which is a password. So dash u when this is dash user, dash p is password. And it's kind of really easy from there to just create the database and then look at it to see if it's there. Um, SQL syntax can be a little bit weird, but one of the things that I like a lot about MariaDB is if you've got something formatted incorrectly, it's usually pretty good about telling you what is missing. So everything needs to end with a semicolon. If you're missing it, it'll tell you you're missing a semicolon near here. Uh, so the way that I did it, here's the first command. I'll go ahead and I'll share them with the host. Uh,
I will copy them over.
yes. So we're gonna work with what we can work with. So there, what that does is it creates a database named VAPI. And then if you do the show databases, like that, it will show that it has been successfully created. The next thing that you need to do, and we kind of saw over here that I looked to see if this was here. Let's clear that. We have the VAPI SQL. This is the whole database right there. And if we cat it, which sometimes it can be kind of not pretty, sometimes it can be encoded. Normally in the real world, we kind of want to make sure things are truncated and encoded. It's not clear text like this, but in this case, because we were intending to set up a lab, obviously we had it like this. This just kind of gives it a database schema. It tells it how to set everything up, what tables to build, and all the information to insert into it. And if you go through it, you can kind of get an idea for how it's doing this. We have right here the create table and then the API one users, and then this just gives all of the information that would need to go in there along with the encoding. If we do the show databases, it would show that we have the API one in there already, but it's going to be empty because all we did was we created the database. What we would like to do now is to import the document that I have open right now. We want to import it into the database that we just created. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I will share probably the pretty standard way, but then I'm going to share my favorite way to do it. Let's see. I'm going to wait for that command to pop up quick so that way I can talk a little bit about it, or I can just paste it over here actually, so that way we can see it. So Callie also, by the way, likes to try and be helpful, but sometimes it's not very pretty whenever it's doing this. But we have here the MySQL, which tells it a command that we are interacting with the MySQL database. Obviously, again, dash p. Normally, you would want to put a password there if there's a password set, but I don't have it here because I'm not giving you guys my root password on my just set up Callie machine. It's definitely not Callie. And this part of the command right here, the VAPI, that is the name of the database that we just created. And we are going to tell it to pull information from this VAPI.SQL. And what this will do is it'll run nice and neat and create all the tables that we need for this. And it might error out. Ah, you know what? Whenever it restarted, it decided that my SQL wasn't there anymore. Wow.
It's been a day.
It has been a day. It's been a week. Let's see. I'm not gonna bother trying to get it installed. It's actually pretty easy to do the apt-get install and then service start. And I can't believe I didn't think of that sooner, but we're just gonna go ahead.
Try disconnecting your share screen for a minute, and let's just do your camera.
Yeah.
Let's go roll with just on camera, and I can copy and
Yeah.
paste text, and you can go that way.
Awesome. And hopefully, okay, did it stop sharing?
Yes, it's gone.
Okay, so
Maybe that will free up your computer a little bit.
yes, I do believe so. Well, I just lost the command that I did a little bit ago, but we can do it with the PV API. If we use the PV command, which is one that you'll have to I think of how to word this. The PV command is pipe verbose, if I remember correctly. And so whenever you're piping something in Linux, which is this fun character right here that you probably saw me use earlier, like if I'm doing this PA, it's a PSAUX, which checks all of the services that are running, and then I can do a pipe and then a grep-i. Let's search for grep because it'll pull back. I know it'll find that I just grepped for grep. Grep is search. Pipe, basically, you're able to run two parts of a command together. So first thing it did was check the system, and then the pipe it says, okay, now that we have all of the list of system service or items running right now, let's look through it for the grep. It does one thing, and then it executes the second part of the command on the first part. So if we do the PV in front of that, and I'm gonna have to double check later because I did
I'm
not
not seeing your text yet.
I know I didn't. Why is it? Sorry. I had to think for a second on how to do this. So for PV, we are going to do it PV vapi.sql, which is the name of that. Then we're going to pipe it. And then we don't have tab complete in the message window. And then the DB name. So with that command, basically, it will give you a progress bar. And I like doing it that way because if you just do the first part, the first command, like I said it was, it doesn't provide any output at all. It just runs. And sometimes, especially with larger databases, it can take quite a while for them to actually start loading data. And this was actually something that I ran into earlier whenever I was importing this when I successfully had MariaDB set up. Oh, those were the best of times. The file was actually empty. But
no, I think we're losing your audio even more than before now.
And you know, I went to the office today because it generally has a much more stable connection than my house.
I think it might be the computer still. Is it still maxed out its resources?
It should not be. Let me go make sure that There we go. Let's see. I made sure the VM was off. Okay, how's the audio now?
It's still crackly at the moment.
Ugh. Doing real good on my debut here, huh?
Oh, well, it's stressing everything you got.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, but
Well,
the
we're
issue
coming
that
up on 5:30.
so yay!
Well,
I still
how about
pulled my way through.
we start to summarize things up a little bit, and maybe we'll come back and do a take two.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to have a chance to retry those one of these days.
Sure, we can do that.
So
And I'll take this time to segue into, you are going to be doing some training that hasn't been announced. The dates haven't been announced yet, but next year you're going to join in some training stuff. So this is kind of a good trial by fire for your
yeah,
system. So when you do get join those trainings, we'll have you set up and ready to go by then. And also that time closer to those dates, you can redo this and
awesome. I would be happy to.
be more ready to go, I guess. I'll say you're not the first person that we've utterly destroyed their system while live streaming.
So maybe next time I should do it from my desktop, not my work computer, so that everybody gets to see my fun
this
games in the background.
this really stresses everything out, especially when you're doing a VM at the same time. It's a lot to ask for a computer, no question. So I guess look for yes, look for the training classes. We will announce those on the Antisyphon website coming up. We do have currently Professionally Evil, a Secure Ideas Professionally Evil is doing some classes that you probably heard us talk about already, which I forgot my link. It's the CISSP mentorship program that's running. There is the API class is going to be coming back around again in 2023, and there is another class which I forgot my note. What was it called? Foundational Data Protection Training. There's a little tease of another class coming up in 2023 that's not live yet, but will be eventually when everything's ready to go. Anything else to say, Jennifer?
For anybody who is, and I will go ahead and share my email address real quick because that's a great idea to do, right?
Oh yeah, that someone was asking if you're on Mastodon too. So
I'm not yet.
Things.
I really do need to set that up eventually. So for anybody who does want to set up the VAPI and would like help with, and especially with the SQL commands on how to do those, if you just send me a quick email, I will share with you all of the commands used to make sure that it's imported over and that it is, you can make sure that there's data in the tables.
Cool. All right. I guess we'll stop you here because your audio is still way behind your video. I guess it's tired. It's tired.
It's the end of the day.
We'll give you a break, and it's the end of the day. We'll call it a day.
Well, thank you everybody for putting up with my
Jennifer.
trouble. Thank you.
We'll try this again another time. I'm going to end the stream now, and we'll see you guys next time. We are scheduled to come back tomorrow, so we should have Hal. I think Hal does Linux stuff. He might be doing some more Linux stuff tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes tomorrow. And see you later. Bye, everybody. Bye. See you later. Bye. I can't talk now. I'm stressed.